Hello, and welcome to another American Gods Chat with M. I am your host, Emily S. Whitten, and we are here to talk about American Gods. Of course, every week I would like to remind you to please like and subscribe to this video, to Movers and Shakers Unlimited on YouTube, and also if you would like to follow me on Twitter, I'm at TheEmilyESSE, as you can see there, and Movers and Shakers Unlimited is Move N Shake UNLTD. So feel free to follow us on Twitter, and there it is, and also on YouTube, and give us your support if you're enjoying these videos. We would really appreciate it. So every week I start out with a couple of reminders and recommendations. One of the reminders I have, because I'm so excited about April 20th, which is coming up soon, is that my new book is coming out April 20th. The first book was called The Underfoot, the Mighty Deep, still is called that, in fact, and it is a story that is one of a series about intelligent hamsters living in a post-apocalyptic world where all the humans have disappeared, and it's just these animals struggling to survive and figuring out what's going on. There are some mysteries, some friendships, some cool science things, and all kinds of stuff. It's appropriate for middle grade and up, and of course we had a blast writing it, so I think everyone would have a blast reading it. Book 2, The Underfoot Into the Sun, is coming out April 20th. You can find it by talking to your local comic shops, indie bookstores, or if you're not able to get to one of those in your area and support them, it's available on Amazon, and we will be providing a link underneath in the info and maybe in the chat as well, so that you can find these books on Amazon. You can also get them at other retailers such as Barnes & Noble and Target. So please check them out, and I'm always happy to answer questions about The Underfoot. It is one of the things I so much enjoy. A couple of recommendations I have this week, because as we are all still here in pandemic land, I think that we're all looking for things to keep our lives happy and good, or things to, enjoy, entertainment-wise. And so one of the things I've been enjoying is a book and Instagram account called They Can Talk. And the book is called They Can Talk, A Collection of Comics About Animals by Jimmy Craig. And it stemmed from an Instagram account where he was making little webcomics about what animals your pets would say if in fact they could talk. And it's really cute, it's really funny, and I believe he also ended up working on Secret Life of Pets too, I assume based on his webcomic and his work doing They Can Talk. So that's a fun little webcomic / book you can support, and again, we'll provide links in the comments underneath, the information underneath, and in the chat perhaps as well. And then a TV show that I'm super enjoying right now, I'm not actually done with it, but I'm already going to assume I'm going to love the whole thing because it's so good so far, is Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso, I didn't know any of the premise of this. I knew that people were watching it and enjoying it. And then when I finally knew what it was about, I was like, why didn't anyone tell me this was about an American football coach who coached a college football team and then went over to England, to London area, and then England to coach soccer, UK European football. And I growing up being a soccer player and playing from when I was very small all the way through high school and some college, I love soccer. I love the culture of it to a certain extent. I don't like people fighting in the stands, but I love the soccer, field and the play and the feeling of it and the team camaraderie and all of that kind of thing. And Ted Lasso is a really funny comedy, but the thing that really makes it stand out as well is that as Ted, who's a super positive person, just with a unique approach to life, goes through his journey, he, encounters all these other characters. They're all going through their own things. And there's a lot of really great character development, interactions, there's negative as well as positive in the story, but there's a lot of positive interaction showing what kind of relationships people can have. And there's a lot of heart and a lot of characters supporting each other. And it's just really funny too, but it's like moving and funny and clever. And so it was developed by Bill Lawrence, Jason Sudeikis, who is the main character of Ted Lasso that you see there, and Joe Kelly and Brendan Hunt. And Brendan Hunt also plays the coach, the assistant coach who comes over with Ted Lasso to work on the team, Coach Beard, and it's just so much fun. So that is on Apple TV, and I recommend it highly. And I am 6 episodes in of the 10-episode season, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next. In fact, I'm like, oh, wait, I have to do this live stream. I guess I can't watch Ted Lasso right now. No, I'm kidding. I love American Gods. I love Ted Lasso. I have a lot of room in my heart for a lot of love for a lot of things, but I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of that. So those are some recommendations for media to look into. And then I had a friend recently who, it was my birthday. So I had a little Zoom party, and a friend of mine said, oh, I really hate, like, I can't deal with Zoom because the lighting makes me look ghastly in the one place in the house that I can sit and you know, with my partner and be on the video. And it's really, I'm struggling with that. So I recommended to her the ring light that I use for my live streams, like this one right now. I've got it on right now. And, you know, when Zoom became a real thing, we were all doing everything on video, I was like, oh, I can just use my lights. And you know what? It's just not as good. So I have this ring light now. I really like it. You can adjust the temperatures, like warmer and cooler of the lights, and you can adjust up and down the brightness of the light. So I recommended that to her, and I'm going to recommend it here in the information underneath this video and in the public comments. We've got a link to that. And it was like $25 or less, and it works really well for me. So that is another recommendation for any of you who are continuing to use video as much as we all are these days and are being hindered from seeing your friends by hating seeing yourself in the camera because you don't like the lighting. I want everyone to be able to get together and see their friends and not feel self-conscious. And so if the lighting is going to help you be better about, you know, feel better about that, then here's a recommendation for that. So those are the different things that I'm shouting out this week as being things that I'm enjoying or making my life better. And I also want to remind you to, at 8 o'clock tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern, the new episode of American Gods, of course, on Stars is going to be airing. You know, obviously it's available on streaming, but I like to watch it live, so to speak. So at 8 Eastern time, I will be live tweeting, and so you can follow my live tweet and join in at the Twitter hashtag AGChat, WEMMNSU, as you see right there. And, you know, if you're not aware, some of the cast members do, in fact, tweet along. So I haven't looked this week yet. I really should get on Twitter and see. But I know that, you know, like Ricky Whittle sometimes shows up, Yetide Badaki, Bruce Langley. And we've got a picture here of Omid Abtahi, because another thing I want to mention is that Ricky Whittle continues to do the Moon Mondays that I've been mentioning. So on Instagram at 1 p.m. Eastern every Monday, he has one of the cast members on to talk about their experiences. It's kind of like an interview, but it's really casual, like a chat, like a friendly chat. And Ricky's a great, you know, interviewer / chatter. He's curious about all kinds of things. He's very like into it, and you know, he's just a really lovely man. So this week we're going to be seeing Salim. This actor played Salim, and so we're going to be seeing a chat with him. And last week we got a chat with Yetide Badaki, and that was delightful. She is just a joy, just a shining light. I love her. And she and Ricky, you know, are, you know, clearly they've spent a good amount of time together over the course of 3 seasons, and they just were having a blast. Like, I mean, everything from talking about, you know, really important things to do with the show to shouting out the, you know, hair and makeup and stunt and et cetera teams that are all the behind the scenes stuff that we don't always know about, but that they want to make sure are recognized, to just like making funny faces at each other on Instagram Live, which is just pretty amusing and fun, especially if it's like maybe lunchtime-ish on a Monday and you're like, ah, this is something to kind of keep me company while I eat my lunch, which is how I do it. So if you haven't caught the Moon Mondays, go to Ricky Whittle's Instagram and he'll do the lives 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then just so I don't forget, Bruce Langley definitely is one of the ones that will live tweet usually at 8 p.m. on Sunday nights. Like tonight, we're going to be doing the new one. So check out his Twitter and see if he's live tweeting tonight, because he will answer your questions. So last week, I asked him a question. I said, the automaton, who we've seen in previous episodes as, one of the earliest iterations that we've seen of Tech Boy, or maybe the earliest at this point, seems like one of Tech Boy's kind of safe spaces, because in the show he climbs under the automaton structure and kind of hides in there once he's glitching after he and Vilquist have an interaction and she does something that messes him up. And so he's glitching and he goes in there as his kind of like safe space. And I asked Bruce Langley, what's one of your safe spaces? And he said, my family. And he is just adorable. So that there you go. There's a question answered from Bruce Langley, but also if you feel like it, you can go on Twitter during the time when it's airing at 8 o'clock tonight and ask him a question and he may answer you. So that's a little fun. I also wanted to give a couple of mentions to various things about American Gods that are just on my mind. One is last week, if you missed it, I got a whole bunch of cool merchandise from the American Gods Twitter when I answered a question from them a couple weeks before that. And so they do ask some questions. I don't know if they're doing any other giveaways, but keep an eye on that. And if you missed it, you can see the unboxing or the unbucketing, since they sent me a metal bucket, of the merchandise they sent me in last week's videos, which is on the playlist on Movers and Shakers YouTube page. So check that out if you haven't. They sent me some really cool stuff. I don't know if it's going to be available generally, but I'm gonna see if I can find out from them. So here's a question that I'm going to be following up on, and I don't know if anyone else has any insider information on this, so we'll figure it out together. But the soundtrack for this season has really impressed me, and I wanted to give a shout out to the music choices that are going on, especially like this current episode that we just watched last week. Some really good music, some really good placement of music. So I'm hoping that eventually we'll get a soundtrack for the season, and I'm going to follow up and see if perhaps that's going to be in the cards for us. So let's talk about episode 7, which was Fire and Ice, and had several main storylines going on. So last week we kind of did a format where we're talking about the different storylines that are the main things we're seeing, and we're going to try that again. A couple of them intersect a little more than last week, but really we've got 4 main things going on. So the first one is the Wednesday quest. So Wednesday and Cordelia are still kind of going along on their crazy adventure together. If we'll remember from last time, Wednesday, Ian McShane had gone, to see Demeter and to try and get her on his side, and he had not succeeded in pulling her along on his quest. And we had found out some of their backstory, but now Demeter had dissolved beautifully into the air, evaporated in petals of light. And now he has to get on with his quest. And so he and Cordelia are driving across the country again. And, they're kind of talking about what happened with Demeter. And then this burning body falls out of the sky. And it is like they're really in the middle of nowhere. And it just falls out of the sky. Freaks Cordelia out, of course. Wednesday's not nearly as phased. And, they have a chat about it. And in doing so, Wednesday discloses to Cordelia that in fact he is a god. And so she hasn't been aware of this. She knew that, this was an unusual situation, but she was kind of going along for the ride and she hadn't been aware of it. So now she is really, as it says, fish out of water. She is really thrown by this and is, very freaked out. So she goes to Shadow. Wednesday says, go find Shadow in Lakeside. And she finds Shadow. And she chats with him about this whole thing and says, is it true that he's an old god? Is it all true? And it's clear just from looking at Shadow that, yes, it is true. This is the life she's in now, unexpectedly. And, Shadow says, look, I was where you are. I get how you're feeling. I'm here for you. And she asks what he is, because she knows that Shadow is Wednesday's son. And he says the jury's still out on that, which is a fair enough answer, because he is still on his journey finding out who, in fact, he is. So Wednesday had left Cordelia sent Cordelia along to Shadow because he was trying to follow up on the burning body that came out of nowhere, that he believed to be one of his followers, and he thinks that a berserker who's supposed to protect him had turned on him. That was Johan, the character from another episode earlier on, and he needs to kind of figure out, what's going on there and follow up on it. So he gets a line on the berserker and shows up. Cordelia is like in the shower, kind of washing off all the crazy, and he says basically that, he was correct. He's the berserker is killing off Wednesday's followers instead of protecting Wednesday like he's supposed to. And he tries to get Shadow to come with him. Shadow doesn't want to come, and Wednesday is very perceptive, as he always is, and he says, because you've met somebody. And so that's in fact true, and Shadow kind of acknowledges it without really saying it and says, look, if you really need me, call me. And Cordelia gets out of the shower, they have a chat, they have a conversation, and Wednesday says, I know you've learned some disturbing truths. And I think Shadow says understatement is Wednesday's specialty, which is in fact pretty accurate. And Wednesday tries to release Cordelia from her agreement to go along with him and be his assistant and all of that. And she says, I don't want to be fired. I'm going to stay with you. And Shadow points out that she doesn't owe him anything. And she points out that her whole world has just changed and she can't just go back to her old life. Like neither could Shadow, and she cannot. And so she's going to go along with this. So Wednesday and Cordelia get on the road again, and they go try to get, figure out where Johan is, and they find, I think he's a troll. I was trying to figure out which of the old gods or characters this is supposed to be. His name is Dunker, and I think he's a troll because you have to answer a riddle to get information from him. And if you don't answer it, we find out at the end, after Wednesday has successfully answered the riddle, if you don't answer it, he gets to cut out your tongue. And so that's creepy. But Wednesday does answer his riddle correctly. He gets to go upstairs to see Johan, and there's nobody there. There's a bunch of gross, disgusting, rotting cattle remains, and the guy hanging for some reason. And, he comes back down and is like, he's not there. And Dunker's like, oh, yeah, he went out. And Wednesday's like, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, well, you didn't ask. So he said he likes to do the riddles. Fair enough. And it turns out that the berserker had said he wanted a dentist. So we know from previous episodes that Tyrrell, or Tur, is the dentist that was the friend of Wednesday's way back in the Revolutionary War, when Wednesday met Demeter because Tur was in love with her, and then Wednesday and Demeter got together, and Tur became like the friend, who was supportive, even though he loved Demeter. So they then know that, Tur is the place where this berserker is going. We flash over to his dentist office. We find out earlier in the storyline, after the body had fallen from the sky, we saw the body on the road from another perspective that was kind of tinged with red and sounded like someone breathing very monster heavily. And we find out that that is the berserker, and that he has this crazy spiky face, and it looks like he's about to devour the dentist with his Tur. And we don't see them for a little while, but when we come back to that storyline again, Wednesday and Cordelia have come to the building where the dentist is, and I love the line where Cordelia says, why does a dentist need such a big building? Because it's this like giant structure. And Wednesday says, so he can feel like he's a success when he knows he's a failure. So there's an epic burn from Wednesday to Tur. But Wednesday tells Cordelia that this is his to deal with, she should go, and she doesn't like that, but she decides to go. But before she goes, she gives him a phone so that she can track him, and he says, thank you for caring. And then, of course, as soon as she walks away, he just ditches the phone. Wednesday, what are you gonna do? So he gets up to the dentist's office, there's blood everywhere, and he finds a body that is very gruesome with like the insides peeled away. And there's a note pinned to it on the dentist pad that says, find me at the wolf's den with the son you hold most dear. So that's the entirety of what happens to Wednesday and Cordelia along this journey. That's part one of the threads of these four threads that are going through this episode. Now we go over to Shadow, who is, of course, connected to this thread, but is having his own adventures. And we get to see Shadow's adventures in small town USA. So he's got a few things going on here. One of them is just what's going on in the small town. Another one is, of course, the search for Allison is still ongoing. And now we've got the panty thief, you know, the person who's been breaking into houses that he saw in the last episode and realized was Derek, one of the small town youths, I guess. And he's also got whatever's going on with Marguerite, which has been heating up a bit. So at this point, you know, Shadow, because he had seen Derek running away from a house that he'd broken into, he's trying to find Derek, and he kind of is like waiting outside the sheriff's office, kind of like, should I go talk to Chad, or should I try to handle this on my own? And Hinzelman sees him from Mabel's, and he then goes into Hinzelman's to get some ice skates because he and Marguerite are going to go ice skating. She's going to teach him how to ice skate. And Hinzelman's like, oh, it's good to see you getting back in the dating pool. And he's like, she just agreed to skate lessons. And he is really not the most forward dater of all time. It's funny how slightly awkward Shadow is when it comes to romantic entanglements. So he rents the skates for the week, and Hinzelman chats with him, says, you know, I saw you looking for the sheriff, and they talk about this difficulty with Derek, and Hinzelman says that, you know, maybe he does need some guidance and everything. So Shadow decides to go to Chad and tell him what's going on. So he and Chad go to Derek's, and Derek is there, and they begin questioning him about Allison, and he provides an alibi, and they say, well, look, even if that's true, you've been breaking into homes, and I'm not sure why, you know. And he basically says, look, I stole the underwear because I like to wear it, and I have nowhere else to get it. And so he's a crossdresser, is basically what it is. I do not remember any of this stuff from the book. I'll have to go back and see if perhaps I'm forgetting something. But that's what's going on there. So at that point, you know, Chad is like, look, I don't care about that part. You know, if you like to dress up this way, if you're a boy, girl, whatever you want to be, I forget the exact line. He's like, basically, I don't care about that. But, you know, what you did is a crime. And so he and Shadow have come to try and, you know, work things out with him because he's a young offender. So that's kind of where they leave that, is they're going to try and deal with that a little more gently, perhaps, than other things, you know, than they might do if he was an older person, perhaps. I'm not sure where that's going, but we'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, Shadow and Marguerite go ice skating, which is super cute and super fun and super awkward. And I also enjoy the behind the scenes little clips that Ricky Whittle has been posting on Instagram showing them learning how to ice skate. I think he said that neither of them, and I think Lena Lauren had also said that neither of them really knew how to ice skate before this. So they were learning on the job. But they go ice skating, and he very awkwardly asks her to dinner to thank her for the lesson. And she then flips the script on him and asks him to dinner instead, and says, you know, like, why don't you come to my dinner, or to my place for dinner, I guess. And, you know, Shadow's like, he had said, like, oh, as a thank you for the lesson, and Leon can come too, her son, her teenage son. And she's like, Leon's got a sleepover. Why don't you come over by yourself? So it's pretty funny. And then he's doing pretty well, and she calls him a miracle on ice. And then, of course, shortly after that, he falls down. But the reason he falls down is because as they're skating, he sees these shadows under the ice. And then he, like, you know, gets thrown off by that. And under the ice, he sees something coming up. And it turns out it's, I assume it's Ganesh, because he sees an elephant. or an elephant-headed god. And Ganesh, I don't know to how much we've seen Ganesh, just a little bit, but he is the remover of obstacles, and he is also known as like the god of intellect and wisdom and arts and sciences. Very broad, very broad. So I'm not sure what the significance of him in this particular moment is. It could be a number of things, but in this instant, he provides a coin, which I believe could be. I'm not sure which coin this is because we see it briefly. It could be Mad Sweeney's coin, but I guess I'd have to freeze frame to see what it was. But I thought that's what it was, and it basically burns up through the ice and spins and ends up under the car tire of the clunker, which, as we'll remember, is sitting in the middle of the lake, waiting for the ice to melt so that it, eventually will fall in, and whoever guessed the right date wins the prize. So this coin comes up from under the ice and melts the ice and ends up on top of the ice and then under the car. And Shadow is like, "Did you see that?" to Marguerite, and the coin's not there. And she's like, "Did you hit your head? I don't know what's going on here." So Shadow's seeing things in Lakeside again, which, as we recall from last episode, he was painting and he saw a cherry tree with the blossoms swirling away after he painted with the kind of, what was it, salmon pink mist, whatever it was, salmon mist, the lovely paint color he was putting on his walls in the hilarious scene last episode where he was also dancing around as he painted. So that scene is pretty interesting. And then later on, again, remember, we're doing the whole of this storyline, but these are kind of interspersed scenes throughout the episode, of course. But later on, they have, obviously had their dinner, and they're in a hot tub together. And it's very steamy, and I don't just mean the hot tub. Wink, wink. I know it's terrible, but it is. It's very steamy. And Marguerite is saying, "Oh, I wish it would snow because it's so amazing when you're in the hot tub and it snows." And Shadow, clearly, he thinks snow, and he makes it snow, which is a callback, of course, to when he made it snow when Wednesday asked him to just think about snow when they were working on the bank heist in a much earlier episode. So he makes it snow, and Marguerite's like, "Oh, it's kind of like you made that happen." And he says, "It's a bar trick I learned," which is a throwback to Mad Sweeney as well, and how he taught him a bar trick of pulling the coins out of the hoard. So there's a couple of little callbacks going on there. And then there's some steamy kissing and making out. So they are clearly getting along really well at this point. Everything's coming up, what is it, Margamoon, as I like to now call them, their portmanteau. And there's some exciting action going on there. And after that, Shadow has a dream. So he kind of transitions out of this steamy lovemaking scene into a dream in which he's on the ice on the lake, and there's all these like bodies or people underneath, like surrounding him. It's a really cool visual. And I know where it's leading, no spoilers, but it's a really neat, interesting, to where we're going, little hint. So the next morning, they're in, I assume they're in his apartment because they must be they're in Shadow's apartment, and there's a knock on the door, and it's Tur, and he has come to find Shadow, and he says, "Hey, I'm your father's friend. Your father needs your help. It's a matter of some urgency, and can you come with me?" And so then Shadow goes along. So that's what's going on with Lakeside, small town America, panty thieves, Shadow and Marguerite, aka Margamoon, and all the things that are happening in the little sleepy village / weird place that is Lakeside. All right, so we've got a couple of other storylines. They're not nearly as big. These take up a lot of the episode, but we do have the continuation of Laura and Salim's excellent adventure. Their strange little quest that they're on together. So Laura and Salim have joined forces to try to find the spear to kill Mr. Wednesday. So this extremely dynamic duo. are they're looking for Wednesday. They're looking for a way to kill him because Laura, of course, has learned that he was responsible for her death because he had Mad Sweeney kill her, and then he was responsible for Mad Sweeney's death, and so she's pretty mad, about the whole thing. And he's messed up her life a lot, so she wants him dead. She has this sole purpose right now. As before she came back to life for real, her sole purpose was finding and protecting Shadow. So now she's got this other purpose. And in the last episode, she found out that Wednesday is Shadow's father. So that's now information that she has on her plate. But she is still after Wednesday. She doesn't know exactly how to do it because they've been trying to figure out where he'd be and everything, and they don't know. But Danny Trejo as Mr. World has confronted them in the end of the last episode and proposed a partnership. So in this episode, we see a series of snippets of their negotiations. So they're in the room where Mr. World operates with the various other tech cronies that he has created, it has created, the Mr. World construct has created. And those include Meme and I think like Trending something, the people that we see who are kind of faceless until he gives them faces. And we've got them in this negotiating room, which you can see here. And World is basically like, okay, I'll talk to you, Laura. You can wait in the lobby. And Saleema's like, I am done waiting in lobbies. And I'm just like, yay! I really enjoy how he's developing in this episode because, as we'll recall, he started out pretty sad and alone, and then he met the Djinn, and they had a relationship, and then his relationship with the Djinn was kind of defining him to a certain extent and trying to find out where the Djinn went. And now he's got a different purpose. He's become fond of Laura. He doesn't want her to be in this alone. And so now he's working with her on this whole thing. So Saleem is not waiting in the lobby. So they're talking to World, and World is like, look, if I act against Wednesday, it would start a war. But for Laura, it's a personal matter. So, I could assist you in doing this without starting a god war. And they're suspicious of it, but they also want to get Wednesday. So, Saleem says, I need to speak to my client. And he asks Laura to let him negotiate because, he was in his own country, was an excellent businessman. And he thinks that, as with the deals that he used to negotiate, the terms are, binding with gods. And he says this is not the time to be impulsive because she is being kind of impatient about, wanting to get down to business and get this figured out. And Laura understandably takes offense to this and is like, look, I know what I want. In this country, women can drive cars, make deals, do all sorts of things. And it's an interesting little flip because he says, that's not the point, essentially. He says, that's true in where I come from as well, but I'm intervening here because I care about you and I don't want you to end up making a bad deal because you're too invested. I mean, that's not exactly what he says, but that's what he's trying to say. And, it's the same thing as saying, don't be your own lawyer, don't be your own, even if, have somebody else representing you when there is this emotion involved. And so although it might have come out in a way that she took offense to, it's actually a valid point because when you're so invested, you may not see all the angles. And so he's basically trying to ensure that the two of them make a good deal because he's a little more detached from it. So Saleem does the negotiating and he's throwing out all these legal terms and it's pretty fun. He's definitely more forceful than we've seen him so far, just in his, just how he portrays himself and is putting himself forward. And then when he and Worlds have kind of gone back and forth a little bit, Laura says, I have a term as well. This protection that Saleem has been negotiating, once this is done for us, for Shadow, for me rather, has to extend to Shadow and Saleem as well. And so World is like, why not? But if you fail, you will die and your friends will die. And Danny Trejo delivers that line very smoothly. It's a little bit killing. It's very casual and just like, yep, okay, whatever. Here it is, So he's going to help them figure out where to acquire the spear. And in a classic Laura move, he will never change Laura Moon, he says Godspeed, and she leaves the room on the line, eat a dick, and then off she goes. And it was Emily Browning is just great. So Laura and Celine go off to, I assume, figure out next steps on this journey that they are doing, where they're going to be aided by Mr. World in how to find the spear that Mad Sweeney had put into his hoard, and then be able to, kill Wednesday. So the last of the threads that we get is Vilquist. As we'll recall, she is on a journey of discovery. She had been a goddess who was defining herself by what others had told her she was, and now has, through the help of the Orishas, been realizing, more about who she is. And so she is trying to learn additional information. So we get Mr. Ibis narrating some of the start of this, saying that, the intercession of the Orishas helped our divine sister identify who she was not, and she is now trying to determine her truth. Where are you going and why, as the Romans say. So Vilquist is seeking this guidance from the Orishas. She has seen visions that have guided her on where she needs to go, and she ends up at this party that is at, I don't remember the street, but it's at 1619 is the street address, which of course is significant because that date was the beginning of slavery in America. So it's very tied into Vilquist's journey and the journey of the Orishas. So at this party, she meets a few interesting characters. One is Eugenia, who she's told is dying. And so Eugenia is pretty salty about it. And she's not really in the mood to, chat with Vilquist when she tries to talk to her. And Oshun is there as well, who's one of the Orishas, and notes that sometimes you can't understand until you are a part of something what it's like. And I believe she's referring to the whole of this party that is clearly steeped in the culture of African Americans, and what their connections are like, and because it's a party, it's got a familial feel, and there's a lot of dancing, and there's socializing of different folks going on, and through all this, Vilquist is kind of looking at and experiencing this party that's happening, and she and Oshun begin dancing, and then the other Orishas are there as well. And it's a beautiful scene. The dance is great, the music is great, and everyone's dressed in sort of like primary or bright colors, like Vilquist is in red and Oshun is in yellow, and I think Umoja, is in blue, and then there's someone in pink, and it's this whirling, beautiful dance. And Eugenia then smiles and gets up to dance, and begins dancing with the Orishas. And at that point, we're hearing basically their internal music, and we get switched back to the external music, which is more of a, not mundane at all, but like a thing we would hear today. I don't know which song it was, but like a party song. But while they're dancing, we get a more, an older rhythmic song and or beat and music, and it's really interesting. So it's similar to what Vilquist experienced when she was stuck in the cell, and Mr. World had people trying to torture her, and also the Bill, what was his name, Sanders, the Bill Gates type guy also had his people trying to get at her. And at one point she starts dancing with Oshun, and you hear this music, and then you see it from the outside perspective, and it's like this horrible techno that they've been trying to use to torture her, but inside she's hearing this other music. So it's a great callback to that scene in the earlier episode. At that point, Eugenia sits down and Vilquist sits down, and Eugenia says, I can't believe I didn't recognize you. And Vilquist says, I had to show you who I was through the dancing and everything. And at this point, there's a mural on the wall, and one of the characters in the mural kind of turns his head and looks at Eugenia, and she says, I'm not ready to go yet. Go harvest your souls somewhere else. Shoo. And the god that's coming out of the mural turns back into a mural. It's just a great little point. And so they hold hands, and Vilquist then has a vision. She realizes that Eugenia was Shadow's midwife. So she helped, Shadow's mother have him and bring him into the world, with Mother Umoja guiding her hands. And she tells at the time how his father was angry that he was bound to the shores of America, and that she didn't like breaking up their family, but Wednesday would have destroyed the boy Shadow. And so Shadow and his mother went abroad. And she then says that Vilquist is the only one with the power to find the other. And she shares that Shadow is only one half, and he cannot lead the we alone. And Vilquist has to go on this quest to find the other so that the people can come together, or these will be our last days. So that is Vilquist's quest that she now has. She has been on this journey to discover who she is, and now she's learned some new information and has found, something that she has to work on in the upcoming episodes of the series. So at this point, we've had several different things going on. We've had Shadow in his small town life. We've got Wednesday and Cordelia and the whole thing with the Berserker and Tur. We've got Vilquist's quest, and we've got, Laura and Salim. And then we get this big old montage of a bunch of the characters right at the end. And we see that, Marguerite is sitting there in Shadow's shirt in the apartment, kind of like she's, it's a very peaceful scene, but she's like probably waiting for him to come back, or like thinking about what has happened, or some amalgam of things. Laura is driving, so she's back on her journey, based on the conversation she had with Mr. World. Chad is at his desk, I guess, taking next actions in the small town. And Tech Boy is still glitching. He's in the Mr. World office, where we earlier saw Laura and Salim, and he's looking down and he's still glitching. And we also then see a bunch of flashes that show, that a killer is on the loose in the groups of folks who would worship Odin, the Valhalla Bar and the Blood Death, I think it was, band and everything. And then we see Shadow in the car with Tur, and Tur gives us this sly old serial killer grin as he drives along. So that's pretty much where we end. It's a pretty interesting way to end the episode, and we're pretty worried for Shadow at this point, because I do not think there are any good intentions in that car from Tur toward Shadow. So that's where episode 7 wraps up. So now we're going to look for a couple minutes at episode 8, which is tonight's episode. As a reminder, as noted, I will be live tweeting at 8 Eastern time with the hashtag AGChatsWEMMNSU. So you can definitely, pick up and hang out with us there. But there's the hashtag right there. I should point this way. I don't know. There we go. So episode 8 is called The Rapture of Burning. And I think what we're going to see here, obviously, is what the heck is happening with Shadow and Tur. Shadow is definitely in danger. Is Wednesday going to find him in time? Because, that note indicates that Tur is drawing Wednesday to the Wolf's Den, wherever that is. And so it's likely that Wednesday is on his way there. And I don't know if he'll get there in time, what's going to happen, but I think we'll see more of that. And then on top of that, of course, Laura and Salim are going along. They're trying to find the spear. They're on their quest to, work with Mr. World to kill Mr. Wednesday. And I assume that we're going to see more of that. Vilquist has just been given new information that I assume she will be acting on, but I don't know at what point we're going to see different parts of that story come together. Will she and Shadow be meeting up? Where did she start finding the other that needs to be with Shadow for the we to, come together? So we'll see maybe what Vilquist is doing and what the heck is happening with Tech Boy. I do not know, We haven't seen much of him at all in this last episode, except for a little bit at the end where he's still glitching. It's clear that he's still got problems. So I assume maybe they'll pick up that thread and we'll see what's going on with Tech Boy. So I think we have a quick clip to show some more stuff that's going to happen. And then we'll close out.
Now I see our story ends in discord and blood. We settle this the old way. So be it. Discord and blood. We settle this the old way. So be it. And who are you?
A woman who needs a weapon. I'm gonna kill Wednesday.
It's about fucking time.
All right, so we're definitely going to see some more Technical Boy, and we're going to see some more Laura, as I predicted. So thank you for watching this recap of episode 7 and theories on episode 8 of American Gods season 3 on Stars. Please do remember to like and subscribe to the Movers and Shakers channel, and to follow me and Movers and Shakers Unlimited on Twitter. My handle is @TheEmilyESSE, and the Movers and Shakers handle is @MoveNShake, UNLTD. And, please hang out with me at 8 o'clock Eastern tonight. It is #AGChatWEMMNSU. And we'll be happy to chat about all the stuff that's going on in American Gods. It looks like tonight is going to be an exciting episode, so stay tuned. I'll talk to you later. Bye.